I am excited. I've been trying to hold on to this all week long. I could not wait for this opportunity. I've been working and waiting just to get here. I am so excited. We've been talking about change, and we've been talking about how since the nation is beginning to reopen after this pandemic, well, not after the pandemic, because please be aware that the pandemic is not over. It is just still as strong, still as effective, and still causing as many problems as it always has. However, the nation decided to reopen for the economy, which I can understand that, but please be safe and be careful. But we've been talking about change over these last few weeks, and we're going to keep talking about change as long as God keeps giving me the word or a word to share about change. Tonight, we're going to start looking at the issues with change, and we're going to look at the issues of change for the next 4 weeks or so. Because one of the things we need to grab right off the top is, if we do not face and handle the issues of change, we will never, ever reach the place of change. With that in mind, let's start this journey, start this 4-week walk on the issues with change. Here's what I need you to write down. The issue with change is not willing to let go of what was and is to have what will and can be. The issue of change, or the issue with change, is not being willing to let go of what was and what is to have what could, would, and can or will be. We cannot move forward in life holding on to what was. Even if what was worked, even if what was beneficial, even if the past helped you get to the present where you are. Where we're going, we're going to have to let go of a whole lot of things, and it's almost going to be like starting anew. I've said this throughout this entire time. We've been talking about change. We're going into a new normal. We're not going into the same normal. A lot of people are still walking around and they're still thinking that, okay, we're going right back into the way things was. That's not so. Everything is changing. The way we go to the grocery stores, the way we go to the mall, the way we go to the barber shop, to the beauty shop, all of those things are changing, even down to the way we're going to church. Here, I'll give you a real good case in point. One of the big issues we have right now is, how do we reopen the churches? How do we reopen large gatherings? Right now, the safest way and the best way possible they're talking about is having parking lot services. Okay, I get that. That's fine. That's wonderful. And that's great. We're still honoring the word of God by gathering and coming together. We're still doing that. But some people are going to have issues with that because it's not inside a building. It's not in a comfort zone, if you will. So we're going to have to understand this right off the bat. Where we're going, our new normal is not what we used to have. It's not going to be the way it was. I'll give you a real good example. I walked into Walmart the other day and I was shocked, and because everyone going in, and I never seen our nation where everyone just about had on a mask. I saw people with makeshift masks on. I saw people with bandanas tied around them. So our new normal, we're going to have to learn how to accept and adapt this change coming and make this change beneficial to us. The issue with change is not willing to let go of what was or what is to have what will and can be. Open up your Bibles, if you will, to Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 through 9. This is where we're going to start. In this series inside of a series called The Issues with Change, we're going to look at one of the biggest changes in the Bible, and that's the children of Israel coming out of slavery and bondage and going into a land that God promised them. Here's another way to look at it: coming out of what you had and what had you bound and going into what God has promised and what God has prepared for you. So Exodus 32:1-9 says this: Now when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, Come, Aaron, make us gods that shall go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. And Aaron said to them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from their hand, and he fashioned it with an engraving tool and made a molten calf. Then they said, This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. Now, if I am you, I'm underlining that verse right there. This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. So, verse 5, so when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. I'm going to come back and work with that. Then they rose early on the next day, offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said to Moses, Go, get down, Moses, for your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf and worshiped it and sacrificed to it and said, This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and indeed it is a stiff-necked, prideful people. Point number 1. Waiting for someone to make the change for you. You cannot wait for someone to make that change for you. Take a look at verse 1. Verse 1 says this: Now when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron. See, we're sitting back in this change and we're waiting for the government to decide what they want to do. Well, the government has already begun to make decisions for us, but it's going to be up to us to make the best change for us and our family. We cannot sit idly by waiting for someone to make a decision for us or a decision for you that's going to benefit you, because that decision may not benefit you. It may be more harmful to you. I like this. Well, let me finish this verse. Now, when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, Come, make us gods that shall go before us. For this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Write this down. The change for others may not be the right change for you. We can't work on the change that is being laid out for us, because the change that is being laid out for us is a blanket change that represents every nationality, every ethnic group, every neighborhood, every economic system. It represents the whole nation. So it is a very broad and wide blanket of change. The problem with things being wide and broad, we tend to get lost and frustrated because we don't know how to operate in this system. We don't know what to do because it's too broad and it's too wide. We don't understand our boundaries. We don't understand how to walk through this change and make it beneficial to us. I'll give you a real good case in point. When you begin to allow on others to make decisions for you, and those decisions are out of the will of God for your life, but you're holding on to those decisions for dear life, you're setting yourself up for a position, for a state. You're setting yourself up for absolute failure. Why? Because the will of God for your life is where the promises are. The will of God for your life is where the blessings are. The will of God for your life is where your provision lies. But when others are making a decision and it's not the will of God, it's not the word of God that is helping you make these changes and directing you toward the area and the places you need to go, and you're holding on to someone else's idea of what you should be doing, now you're walking under someone else's umbrella of safety and security and not under the umbrella of God's safety and security. You cannot rely on someone else to make that change for you. Waiting on others or walking in someone else's change and someone else's idea and someone else's platform may not work for you. One of the things I always mention when we do the series on faith or when we do the faith seminars is this: how God has instructed me to operate in faith may not be how God has instructed you to operate faith. One thing is certain and one thing is for sure. The word is the same today, tomorrow, and forevermore. The word never ever changes, but how you approach that word and how you utilize and apply that word to your life, those are the differences between you and I. We get the same amount of faith, we get the same measure of faith, but how we apply that faith to our lives, that's the difference. And you cannot take someone else's change and apply that change to your life. When you apply that change to your life, now you're walking outside of what God has prepared for you, and the change of someone else may become confusing, it may become stressful, it may cause all kind of health issues, it may cause all kind of financial issues, all because that change just not fit. It's not a fitted, tailored suit for you. Take a look at point 2. Point 2, following the majority. Following the majority. Following the majority. That is one of the biggest problems in this process of change. In the process of change, it's easy to follow what everyone else is doing. It's easy to do what your close-knit circle is doing. It's real easy to follow and become engrafted to what everyone else is doing. One of the things I spend a whole lot of time instructing my family is this: we're not the normal family. What the Joneses and the Johnsons do, that may not work for us. We can't do what everyone else do. We can't walk the way everyone else walk. We can't live the way everyone else live. We can't do everything everyone else do, because God has laid out a specific plan for our lives, a specific plan for our family. And if we're going to achieve the goal and achieve what God has called us to do and reap the reward and the benefit and walk in the blessings of God, we have got to stay within our boundaries. That's a good word there, boundaries. Boundaries are necessary when you're talking about change. If there are no boundaries, you can go all over the place and just start spinning your wheels and never accomplish anything. Following the majority is a huge problem. Take a look at verses 2 through 5. Verses 2 through 5. And Aaron said to them, break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold from them. He fashioned it with an engraving tool and made a molded calf. Then they said, this is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. So when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made a proclamation and said, tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. Write this down. Following the majority is nothing more than a distraction when it is not God's plan for your life. One more time. Following the majority is nothing more than a distraction when it is not God's plan for your life. Take a look at Aaron. Aaron had been anointed and called to be the priest, the high priest. Not the high priest. He had been called to be the anointed priest and walk alongside of Moses, leading the people. Here it is, Aaron, down in the mountain, at the bottom of the mountain with the people. When he's supposed to be leading, instead of leading, he's being engulfed and becoming a part of what the people are saying and what the people are doing. Take a look at what he said. Here's what his first thing he said: break off the golden earrings. Why would he need to say that? This is a priest. He should have been saying, Moses, the man that brought us out of the land of Egypt, he has gone to spend time with God, to get instructions for God, that we can continue our journey and walk in the blessings and the promises of God. Is what he should have been saying, but yet instead he followed the multitude, and now he's gotten out of not just his position, but he's even gotten out of his office. And now he's become subservient to the people. The people are leading him instead of him leading the people. Then he turns around and he makes another statement. He says, first of all, he received from them the gold. And it was Aaron, because Aaron was a gifted toolsman. He was a gifted engraver. They brought the gold to Aaron, and Aaron, the priest of the Most High God, made a molded image. Can you not see the problem with that? Following the people, it is easy to get sidetracked when you get engulfed in following the majority. It is easy to get sidetracked when the majority is talking in your left ear, talking in your right ear, and they're constantly coming at you. It's easy to get caught up in that when all you need to do is say, stop, hold up, wait a minute, I'm not trying to hear this. I need to hear from God. But when you're caught up and you're walking in the majority and you're following the majority, keep in mind, it was not an attack of the people, but the people came for Aaron. The first thing they said, they gathered to Aaron. So they came for Aaron to get Aaron distracted from leading the people, because if Aaron would have led the people never would have said, let us make a golden image and call it the God of Israel, the God that brought us out of the land of Egypt. Well, there was no golden calf when we walked by the pillar of fire. There was no golden calf when they walked by the cloud at night. There was no golden calf. So you have to be careful not to get caught up in what the majority is doing, not to get caught up in following what everyone else is doing, because what everyone else is doing can become a major distraction to what God has called you to do, and you miss out on the promises of God. Let's look at point 3. Point 3, my last point. Perverting God's plan for your life. When you get caught up in the majority and doing what everyone else is doing, when you're waiting for someone else to make change for you and allowing them to make decisions for your life, now you're beginning to pervert God's plan for your life. I like what I heard a preacher said. A preacher said it this way: when you begin to twist what God has called you to do, now you're beginning to take what God said and turn it and make it wicked. All it is you twisting and perverting the plan of God for your life. Listen, the plan of God for your life, it is easy to hear, it's easy to follow, it's easy to understand, but the challenge is God's not going to give you the whole thing at one time. He cannot give you the whole plan, because if he gives you the whole plan, you're not going to be able to understand the whole plan. You're not going to be able to digest the whole plan. You're not going to be able to follow the plan out, because all you're going to see is the end result. Remember, God always starts from the end and works backwards. So once he'll show you the end result and then take you back to the beginning, that you can get to the point, you have to be able to follow God's plan for your life. Take a look, perverting God's plan for your life. Look at verse 6. Then the people rose early on the next day, offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Listen, they did the same thing Aaron did. Right at the end of Aaron made an awesome statement to try to turn things back toward God and say, tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. However, the people took it as he's talking about the God he just made, the idol that we call the God of Israel. He's not talking about God most holy, God most high. Aaron realized his mistake, but it was a little bit too late to try and turn things. Aaron actually was trying to cover himself. Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. He never stipulated what God. He never stipulated the high God. He left it up to the people to interpret. So when you are perverting the things of God, the blessings of change only come with obeying God's system and plan for your life. Write that down. The blessings of change only come with obeying God's system and plan for your life. Look at what the people did. God had already gave them a system. He told them when he brought them out of Egypt and brought them to the Mount Sinai, this is what he said. And he gave Moses instructions about burnt offerings in the tabernacle, bringing peace offerings, and all the feasts that were to happen. But here's what the people did. They took the things of God and brought them to an idol and presented those things to an idol that was not breathing, that was not living, that cannot feed them, that cannot protect them, that cannot cover them, that cannot provide for them, and that cannot heal them. So they took the things of God and perverted it and gave it to an idol and thought it was going to be okay, thought it was going to be all right, thought everything was going to be lovely. But that was not the case. So the blessings of change only come with obeying God's system and plan for your life. Listen, God's system for your life is the only system that you need to follow. God's system for your life is nothing more than the way God has called you to do what you are being called to do. You can't do things the way I do things. I can't do things the way you do things. I told you before, God told me a long time ago, I can't eat hamburgers. Nothing wrong with that. I'm happy with that. I enjoy it. It's no big thing to me. It was never a big thing to me in the beginning, because when God tells me to do a thing, my heart's desire is to follow God. I'm not trying to understand it right off the top. I'm just trying to do what God said do, because I know if I walk out my instructions from God, understanding will come. And when understanding comes, now I have the wisdom I need to go with the knowledge God has imparted into me, and it will show and lead me to the promises of God. Not only does God has a system for your life, but that system God has for your life is walking in the plan of God for your life. The more you operate the systems of God for your life, the bigger the plan of God for your life begins to unfold. It begins to manifest. It begins to develop. The more you operate in the systems of God, the more God's plan becomes revealed to you. Last scripture, we're going to close with this. Take a look at Isaiah 1:19 and 20. Isaiah chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. I love this scripture. Here's what it says. If you are willing and obedient. If I am you, I'm underlining willing and obedient. I'm highlighting it. I'm putting asterisks by it. I'm putting arrows by it because he's talking about us. If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured by the sword, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Look at it. Here it is. If I'm willing and obedient, in other words, if I'm following the systems and obeying the plan of God for my life, here's what God has promised me. I'll eat the good of the land. What land? The land that God has placed me in, my surroundings, my environment, my job, my bank account. Everything that concerns me is good ground, and I'll eat the best of it. However, if I refuse and rebel, here's what we need to understand. I can't be willing and not obey. Just because I'm willing and still refuse to follow God's plan, that's not going to lead me into the good of the land. I have to be willing and obedient. And I cannot refuse and not be in rebellion. When I refuse to do what God has instructed me, I am still in rebellion. You remember growing up when your mom told you to do something, your dad told you to do something, and you just flat out rebelled? You simply refused to do. You were in rebellion, and we all know the punishment for that. We all knew what was coming. I'll never forget when my youngest son was younger. He understood consequences at a very early age. He knew what was coming. His mindset was this. Well, I know I'm going to get in trouble. I know I'm going to get a whooping anyway, so I might as well go ahead and do what I'm going to do and do it to the best of my ability and get all the enjoyment I can get out of it because I know I'm going to get in trouble. We did the same thing growing up. We do the same thing as adults. We overdrink. We get caught up in drugs and all of the perverted things of the world, not because that was the choice we wanted or that's what we chose to do, but we just wanted to go along with the majority. And going along with the majority, we ended up in refusing to do what God's called us to do and walking in rebellion. So we got devoured by our own actions. Our mouth and what we did brought us to a place of struggle, brought us to a place of trying times, brought us to a place of hard times, brought us to almost the brink of losing our lives. All because we refused to be obedient and willing. We refused God and rebelled against his way. So, as we move through this change in the nation, and as the nation begins to open up, I beg you, spend some time with God. You have more time now than you've had in maybe the last 5 years of your life. Spend some time with God and find out, God, how do I go into this new era? How do I move? What are you calling me to do? One of the things we're going to look at later on in the next couple of weeks is how this new area, God has opened up doors for more new businesses and more people to gain and become financially stable and financially sustain themselves and not depend on the government. We're going to look at all of that, all because of this thing that we're calling the new normal. You cannot go into change allowing others to make decisions for you. You cannot go into change following the majority. And please never go into the change process perverting and twisting what God has called you to do. We're going to get through this, and you're going to come out in victory, for we're in the change process. So follow the plan, and remember, Jesus is Lord.